folks. Welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Well, a lot of things going on in the news, which has been pretty normal here lately. Just every day, a big old flood of stuff in the news. But there's a couple of things that I want to talk about in today's video and try to connect them because you won't see so much connection in the mainstream news. You know, they report things as if they are just little singular events happening out there coincidentally. And as we all know, because we talk about it often on here, that pretty much all the stuff that you're seeing happening, it's all just a puzzle piece, okay? Part of a greater picture of events going on and a greater plan to reset and basically take over our world and our society into some new utopian agenda for the future. So we'll talk about that, but I want to start off with just some other random things in the news that I just wanted to mention because sometimes I do that on here. The first one is this: the IMF. You know who the IMF is. I shouldn't have to tell you, but they're not really the good guys. But anyways, the global banksters have come out and said that they don't believe that this whole conflict with Russia and Ukraine is really going to have any greater economic problems on the planet. They don't really think it's going to. They don't think it's going to cause too much problem. And so when I read something like that from, the IMF, my first thought is, oh, we need to read between the lines. So in other words, we are basically in the midst of a global recession. Because for them to come out and say this and say, it's kind of like, it's only transitory. Don't worry about it. It's just a V-shaped recovery. It's fine, folks. Don't worry about those gas prices that are now over $2.50 a gallon. They'll come down. Oh, they're only $3. Oh, the $3. Well, don't worry. It's just temporary. Oh, you're paying $3.50. Don't worry. They'll come back down. Don't worry. Oh, now it's $4.50. It's just transitory, folks. Don't worry. And so when folks like this say that they don't think it's going to cause any global economic problems, that's when you should probably start being concerned. The other thing that I saw in the news, and I don't know, I just want to talk about it, is a recent poll, apparently. And we know how all these polls are so accurate, right? We know that they're just 99.99% accurate all the time. But apparently this one is saying that most Americans now, are actually in favor, have given the thumbs up to having LGBTQ, whatever, XYZ agendas taught to their young elementary school children. Now, of course, I don't think that this is accurate. But let's just play this out for a moment and say that it is. If this has any bit of accuracy whatsoever, should this not be concerning for the actual rest of the United States that it's possibly one more signal in the collapse of our society that I've been talking about for 2 years on here, that we are now at a point that parents are okay with this kind of stuff being taught to their young children, not just sex education, but LGBTQ and all that kind of stuff education. And if anyone actually kind of looks at this stuff and really reads and understands what they're talking about teaching them, I don't know how any rational thinking person cannot look at it as grooming. And it has nothing to do with whether you think the person that chooses to live that life or not that's not the point. It's the point is teaching this to children. This to me is crossing lines, but apparently according to this poll, that most parents actually want it. Interesting. The other thing that I saw in the news is they don't want you to forget about them, okay? They know that there's been so much in the news that's distracted you, but they're feeling lonely. And their pocketbooks aren't as fat as they once were just a few months ago, because Pfizer is letting you know that they do in fact recommend a fourth booster shot. You should have it. I know that we're getting ready to go battle with the Ruskies, but you need to get your fourth. You need to get your fourth before you go running off to war, because heaven forbid, don't worry about that Russian dirty ammo hitting you in the chest. What you need to worry about is the thing that's going around. So certainly get your fourth one. Apparently that's what Pfizer is saying. Anyways, though one of the things that I really want to talk about is just what's going on with Russia, the United States, NATO, Ukraine. We're entering, what is it now, the third week, I guess. And I think some people are kind of maybe growing tired of it already, because that's what Americans do. We have a little tiny, minuscule attention span, and we have to have, you know, over sensitivity to our brain so that we can keep attention to something. It's like, the whole country has ADD all of a sudden, and we just can't focus on something very long. Also, I firmly believe that 99% of the stuff that's being talked about in the mainstream news and online when regards to Russia and Ukraine is all complete propaganda. I mean, now they're saying, what is it, 16,000, 18,000, 12,000, something like that, Russians dead. That's insane. I mean, I believe, and I may be wrong, but I believe that's more Americans than that died in Afghanistan in the entire time we were there. And the thing is that's a lot of people, folks. And where's the evidence of that? There really isn't. And this is by far one of the biggest propaganda wars that I've ever seen. And so we're seeing that build. We're also seeing our own government basically talk out of both sides of their mouth. In one moment, the president is saying, we are absolutely not putting U.S. troops on the ground. We will not be engaging with the Russians. We are not doing it. We're just not doing it. That's World War III, and we're not doing it. We're not going to war with the Russians. While his vice president is out there talking even more gibberish than him, which is really shocking that anyone can be more, mouth fumbling and babbling and all that kind of stuff. But she's saying basically something else, that if Russia crosses the line and an errant missile or bomb lands on the NATO soil, or if a NATO supply or NATO anything gets touched by Russia, that's NATO, Article 5 comes into play and we're going to war. And so I know a lot of people could say, well, that's kind of one and the same. We don't want to go to war. We don't want to go to war, but if they push us, we will. But I don't think that's really what's going on. I think this is all part of their little psyop on the American people, to reassure them that we're not warmongers, to reassure them that we're not actually actively trying to engage in this war, while on the other hand saying, well, we really are. I think it's just part of their psyop. That's how they do business. If you understand and do any research in how psyops work, and things like MK Ultra and stuff, this is what they kind of do. They kind of, well, they make you, they mess with your mind. Okay, that's to put it simple, and that's how they do it. And I think that's what's going on. That's part of all this ridiculous propaganda. I mean, there's some propaganda coming out that I can't believe at all. And I can't even understand how anyone can believe it. And there's been a lot of it that's been proven to be propaganda. And what's interesting is we're not really hearing anything from the Russian side. Have any of you noticed that? And you can't say it's because of sanctions and stuff. We're just not hearing anything from the Russian side. It's at least very, very, very little from the Russian side. I don't think it's because they're being defeated. I don't think that. I think that there's some massive propaganda being played here, and this is a war that's been going on for years. And as far as World War III, we're already there, folks, and we've been actively engaged in World War III for a while. See, in the past, there were basically two types of war. There was a hot war where you're actively engaged in battle, and there was a cold war where you were stalemate and you were constantly threats, and there was tension. Well, now we have a third kind of war, and that's a technological and financial war, and that's what we're involved in. And honestly, that kind of war can damage another side just as bad in a lot of ways. It can cost just as much money, and it can actually cost human lives too, if it goes on long enough. So I would say most definitely we are involved in World War III. Now, will that World War III actually end up being bullets and bombs? I don't know. I suspect at some point it will. That doesn't mean I'm predicting it or anything. I just suspect at some point that there's going to be some more hostile involvement between NATO and Russia. It may not be right away, but I think at some point it's going to happen. And well, that's one of the reasons why we prepare, because um, I think when that happens, there's a lot of things at risk. There's always the risk of China coming involved. There's obviously nuclear risk, because you've got two nuclear powers. We've got people like Lindsey Graham over there just like tripping over himself, wanting us to go to war. He's flat out saying that we should. He's wanting no-fly zones, assassinations, and all kinds of stuff. I mean, the guy is just, it's like he's, drooling on himself when he talks about war. So the possibility of something happening, I think, is like I've said in the last week or two, is growing more likely each day as this gets drawn out. And the likelihood of even an accident happening or a false flag happening becomes more likely. Russia is once again saying that, hey, we are not going to not bomb any supply chains coming in from NATO, whether it's American or any other country. They will be targeted, and we will take them out. And in fact, they've attacked a base on the border with Poland, and there was all a big scuffle about that. And then apparently, a U.S. citizen that was a reporter for the New York Times was killed. Apparently, this New York Times reporter hasn't even reported for the New York Times in like 7 years. So I think that there's some fishiness going on there. Could that lead to something else? It's possible. I'm not saying that the person didn't die, but it does seem a little fishy when you dig into it and find out that the guy hasn't actually had an article or any works published by the New York Times in like 7 years. And apparently, no one can confirm that he was actually in country in Ukraine working for the New York Times. He just happened to have a press pass. So that's interesting. I think that, again, there's a lot going on there, and there's part of it is a distraction. It's a distraction from this health crisis, because I think it's going to come back. We're seeing it happen over in Asia. China's reported one of the highest case days in a long time. So has, I think, South Korea and a few other countries over there in Asia. That's where it kind of all started. Does that mean here in a few weeks or a couple of months we're going to see a new variant happen here in the United States? It's very possible. We've got Pfizer pushing for their new booster. I don't think that that's dead. Not for a moment. I think they have to distract us long enough to get our attention off of it, to make us forget about it long enough, so they can bring that back. But certainly there's a lot of stuff going on in Ukraine and Russia, and we should be stocking up. We should be. I'm hearing reports from people all over that certain things are becoming a little bit harder to find. They're one of the things that I've gotten several people contact me about is canning equipment, canning jars, lids, and rings. Now, for the whole health crisis, they have been in shorter supply than normal. They've been hard to come by, and then they're that way seasonally. Every year when the harvest comes in, they dry up all of a sudden because everyone runs out and buys them because the harvest's coming in. Well, this isn't the harvest time of the year. So why all of a sudden are we seeing store shelves empty out when it comes to the canning supplies? Well, it's very possible that there's enough people out there that really see what's going on and understand the danger of it, and they're taking the opportunity to prep up. So that's something that you should be looking at purchasing. It doesn't matter how good you are at putting out gardens if you don't have a way to preserve the food you produce. Well, it doesn't really do much good. So you can't eat fresh salads all year long. You have to preserve the food so that makes it last. And the last thing that I want to talk about on here is the Federal Reserve chairman has announced that Tuesday they're going to be having a meeting and making an announcement. Everyone's assuming that it's going to be a Fed rate hike. They said it was going to happen this month, then this whole war, and then, well, maybe they're not going to do it. Well, now probably they are. Everyone's assuming that somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2% rate hike is going to happen. If that does, stock market's probably going to have another big loss this week, and I would suspect that the commodity market's going to rally, which means all the stuff that we're already paying way too much for is going to get a lot more expensive. This whole raising the rates, I understand that's their little playbook. Let's print more money than's ever been printed, 40-some% or more of the dollars that's ever been created in American history, we're going to create in a year to 18 months. And completely flood the market and cause inflation, and then we're going to raise interest rates and crash the economy, because they got to do this because they're really pushing for this digital dollar, folks. And I think Glenn Beck, I believe, said this, but I agree with him. I think that they're going to try to push this year, because if the Democrats lose the Congress, and then next January the Republicans take over, it's very possible that they won't get it implemented. So there's a strong likelihood that this digital dollar is going to be pushed this year, by the end of this year. And if that happens, that means they got to make the paper dollar look pretty bad. It means it could completely collapse it. I mentioned the other day, and I'm going to mention it again. If you do some research into the economic collapse and hyperinflation in Weimar Germany back in the 1920s, it was less than a year period, folks, between them having life as normal and their purchasing power of their currency was pretty normal, to where it cost millions of their currency, millions of their marks just to purchase, a cup of coffee. It was outrageous. I think it was something like 40 million marks or something like that just to purchase a loaf of bread, which before that didn't cost much any more than what it would here in the United States, less than $1. That happened in less than a year, folks. I mean, it went from fairly normal to where it completely collapsed within, maybe a 6-8 month period of time. That's actually quite rapid. And with the technology that we have nowadays, I could see that time frame being even shorter of watching a collapse. So it's quite possible. I know that they have said that they believe that the current US dollar can totally work side by side with a digital US dollar. But they're not going to get everyone on board a digital US dollar as long as we still have paper currency. It's not going to work for them in the long run. Their absolute control over it won't happen if you can still use the paper dollar. And really they can't recall it. They can't make everyone just turn it in. The only way they can get rid of it is causing it to crash. And a lot of people believe that's what's going to happen. And I think the likelihood is pretty high. And then they'll just very quickly say, but it's okay. We got a digital dollar, right? We got it ready. We got it worked on. They've been working on this for months, for really years now. And as far as the technology and everything, it seems that they could probably implement it tomorrow. It's just working out all the legal and political details of getting it going. So be watching for that, folks, because with everything that's going on, interest rates going up, stock market's down, things are bad. I sound like a movie from the 70s. Things are bad, and they're going to get bad. A dollar buys a nickel worth of, gasoline anymore. So get ready, folks. Keep stocking up. Keep getting your houses in order. Prepare yourselves mentally, physically, and most especially spiritually, because in the end, this is all just spiritual warfare from the beginning. So folks, get yourselves ready. Thank you all for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.